here. Okay. Welcome to the No Boring Stories podcast. I am Alex Street, and this is the place where you can trust that there are no boring stories. So thankfully, we've got Charity Majors on the show today. She is no newbie to pulling stories out of people. She hosts her own fabulous podcast called Meant for More and a whole community of faith-filled female entrepreneurs. Oh, I love it. And she is here today to share her story and talk all about what makes for good storytelling as well. Charity, how are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing good, Alex. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, this is so good. It's just always an easy conversation between us. That's what I love. I mean, we've chatted a few times, and it does. You have this ability to kind of just bring people from, like, if there's like a heightened state of people, I feel like, tell me if you get this a lot. People might come to you at like maybe feeling a little bit on edge, maybe feeling a little bit stressed, and then you just you just have this like calming presence to you. Have you heard that before? Have you got that before? Have people said that about you?
Sometimes yes, and other times I'm like the hype girl that just bring people
Well,
up to get excited. So yes,
sure. I mean,
both.
but that's a different kind of like stress, a different kind of energy. So you can calm people down and get them pumped up at the same time. I think I just love the presence that you bring. That's what's important, is you are just fully present, I think, wherever you are. So
Thanks.
um yeah, I think that really stands out for you. Look, we're going to get into your story and what you're doing and how you're helping people, but you said to me this phenomenal sentence. And I just want to start here because I don't know if this is like something that you talk about a lot or where this is, but you said what makes for good storytelling is for you to do the healing so you have the story, not so that the story has you. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Well, it all started actually when I began to share one of the hardest stories coming from my life, one of the hardest seasons coming from my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll touch on it in just a second.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll
And
get there.
as I was sharing this, people just kept saying, wow, like, how are you able to talk about this in such a way that you're not like falling apart, that you're
Mm,
not, like breaking down and crying? And it wasn't always like that. Like when I first shared about this, what I like to call like the dark night of the soul that I went through,
yep.
it had me. I wasn't able to talk about it without it triggering this huge emotional response and this huge emotional breakdown. And that was because I hadn't gone through enough of the healing process for me to be able to hone, like to harness the power and the lessons of that story.
Mm,
And so that's why I'm such a firm believer that healing, especially when we go through hard times, that is what allows us to then capture the goodness of the story, to capture the lessons of the story, where we are able to have our story instead of it having us.
it's so good. I mean, I just had this conversation yesterday. They somebody else, asked me, yeah, I've got this really big, heavy story. It's devastating, and it's really hard for me to talk about. How do I share this without, not only without me breaking down, but without like steamrolling people and saying like, oh, you want to hear my story? Well, and then you just run over them with this devastating turn of events. And I think there's part of ownership, as you say. And I think it really, as I described it, I'm like, we think that this moment, you go through a deep, devastating, traumatic experience, whatever it might be, and for some reason, we shrink our story down to be that moment, whether it was a year, 5 years, 10 minutes, whatever it was, we shrink our story down to think that that's our story. But the truth is, when you can separate yourself from just that moment and go, wait, but who was I before that moment? And
Yeah.
now, since then, who have I become?
Yeah.
There's the story. And that moment simply becomes like, the climax, if you will, the turning point. And that, I think, empowers us to own the whole thing instead of feel owned by that moment. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So good. Okay. You also said that one of your favorite stories is Sleeping Beauty. Why is that?
Mhm. It's so funny. I remember even watching the movie as a little girl. Like I just loved, like, first of all, she was blonde, like, so she reminded me of me. And I just loved that she was kind of this, like, didn't know like how beautiful she was or how loved she was. And so, and then when she woke up to that, um something inside of me always resonated with that. And I think it was funny because I was growing up, I was kind of this, like, I was like tall and skinny. I joke that I kind of look like a baby deer. Like I was like nothing but like, like just like
Like
really
Bambi trying to walk on
gangly.
the
Yes,
ice,
like
like
Bambi trying to walk on the ice.
just like
And
splayed out.
yes, like long arms, long legs, and really just hadn't necessarily grown into my body yet. And now being tall, I'm like 5'10. I played sports. But when it really hit me that it was like Sleeping Beauty was actually when I dove into, as a grown adult, into the world of pageants. And I still, even when I dove into the world of pageants, didn't think that I was the pageant girl. I actually used to be a personal trainer. So I was like the sweaty girl in sweatpants that like hardly, like I'd like touch sweaty people all day and, didn't really shower.
Yeah.
And like people just kept saying, you should do this, you should do Mrs. Idaho, you should do Mrs. Idaho. And I'm like, no way, like I'm the personal trainer. Like, and eventually about a year later got to the point where I was ready to like dive into a new group of girls. I saw how involved they were in the community and helping out with a lot of different nonprofits. I knew I wanted to get more into public speaking. And so, and I had my own wellness studio. And so I was like, well, I'll just have like 50 women like come to my gym. So it's like
Yeah.
really good for my business too, right? Kind of a win-win-win for a lot of different
Yeah.
areas. And I dove in, and actually like 4 months later ended up winning Mrs. Idaho. Like a year later going on and like winning Mrs. of the Americas and competing at Mrs. World, making top 6 in the world. Like it was this really interesting space where I found out, oh, I really thrive in this, in around other high level women that like to do their hair and like to do makeup and like to contribute to their community and are really great, at getting their messages across in really
Yeah.
short amount of times and being judged and being okay with being judged. and and so it was kind of this like full circle moment where it was like, oh, like I woke up to like this beauty inside and out and being comfortable with it and being okay with it. And I found a space where before, like I almost felt like I was too pretty for the sporty girls but too sporty for the pretty girls, as I grew up like in high school and kind of in college. And kind of found a space where my too much for some people was par for the
Hmm.
course.
Okay. So here's what just happened. Right? I'm like, all right, tell me about Sleeping Beauty. And you're like, look, Sleeping Beauty is not just an 85-minute Disney movie from the 50s. Okay. It's like this whole experience, or even let's go back to Brothers Grimm or whoever, originally wrote the idea. But like, it's this for you, it's this lived experience. It's this
Mm.
story that might be 60, 70, 100. I don't actually know when the original sort of was written, the original fairy tale. Um, came out, but it's extremely old. And yet you're like, no, 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 it's something that I'm living through, have lived through this experience of having this whole sense of being. And yet it's too much for some people. And so what do? You hide yourself. Like I'm just imagining Aurora, the princess, like she's too much for Maleficent. Maleficent's like, I'm jealous. I didn't get to be here. You're too beautiful. You're going to be cursed with this and the whole everyone. And then she goes and lives in a forest so that and she hides away from the world and she's protected. And then you're like, she finally wakes up to who she is and what she's supposed to do in this world. And this was your experience. This is what stories do for us. We
Yep.
find ourselves in them and they give us the opportunity to share our own story, which you just did in a really kind of magical way, to
Thanks.
wake up to this world, to wake up to who
Yeah.
you are and show up. Do you feel like you are more awake now than you've ever been, more aware, more alive? Is that where you're
Oh,
at?
for sure. For sure.
I'm excited to hear where else you've fallen asleep, or where else you were asleep, or like hiding back, or what that is, because you just opened up some cans here of, okay, so you were a fitness trainer, um, you were a beauty pageant, you just casually said sixth in the world. Wait a second. And now here you are. Tell us what's the main work that you're bringing to the world now then, as your full, wide awake self. What are you doing, and what's the impact that it's making now?
Well, it's actually kind of stems back to that dark night of the soul and kind of that harder time in my life where it's
Okay,
a
but
lot
hold
of it
on.
is stemming from that.
I want
Yes.
to get there.
Okay.
But first I just want to hear, like, where are you at now? Like, what's the thing
Mhm.
now? And then we'll backfill with what got you here.
Okay.
So, like, as you show up today, like, what are you going to do to help people today in your work?
So it's the big message of meant for more, right? You heard it
Mm-hmm.
on my podcast. That's actually what my book is called. And it's igniting your purpose and daring to be all that God has called you to be.
Mm.
And right, I think that we, as human beings, right, go through this journey where we somewhat forget who we are and that we are a God dream wrapped in human skin
Mm.
on this planet out of all of eternity and chosen for this exact time in history. And I think that we forget how powerful that really is. And I think that we forget that it's like one out of like 114, like it's like 14 zeros, whatever that number is, trillion, bazillion, I don't even know.
Yeah, let's just say bazillion,
Chances,
just because.
bazillion. Chances of you literally being here on the planet right
Yeah.
now. And that's something significant. And I think that so many times, right, similar to Sleeping Beauty, we kind of go through this phase of hiding and we go through this space of not knowing why I'm here or like what magic do I bring to the world. And I think we're all born for significance. And I think that when we can uncover that, right, I like to call it
Mm-hmm.
gold mining, right? Like sometimes we got to sort through the junk. We got to like find those gold nuggets of from our story, from
Yeah.
um, the unique way that we were designed, and how we can really show up in the world and help others.
So you're at this place with a book, with a podcast, with a community and coaching, helping people discover the more that they're meant for. Like, is that how you're opening people up, how you're opening your mind to see that, yeah, it's not an accident. You said you're a God dream wrapped in human skin. Goodness
Yeah.
gracious. That's the work that you're doing. That's where I would say, yeah, where does that begin? And you opened us up a little bit to this. But even, again, before this dark night of the soul, go back a little bit further and go, like, again, was this just always instilled in you? Did you grow up with this idea that, like, there's a big plan, there's a big destiny, there's impact that I'm supposed to make beyond just this human skin sack that is that is walking around here? That's a gross way to think about it. That, like, what was that, as a little girl? Is that who you were? Is that what came up? Is that what led you to get into competitive, whether it's sports or uh beauty competitions, whatever that is? What leads you towards that, and where did that begin, this idea of meant for more?
Well, yeah, I would say when growing up, I wasn't the little girl that was like, I'm going to be a doctor and I know that I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I like
Mm-hmm.
had my 27-year plan all laid out.
Right.
I was definitely the dreamer. I knew I was going to do some really great things. I was a firstborn, so leading was
Yeah.
definitely a part of what I normally did anyways. I just always seemed to find myself in leadership positions.
Yeah.
Um, and what was
Who are
interesting
you looking
is,
up to? Like, who are you watching and being like, yeah, that's who I want to be, that's who I'm following, that's who's encouraging me?
oh, it was Mariah Carey for sure.
This is great. I was expecting like it was Mrs. Johansson, my math teacher. Like, oh, it's Mariah, no
No,
doubt.
Mariah.
Sweet,
I would
sweet
sit in the
fantasy
back of
baby. Let's
our,
go.
yeah, in the back of our minivan with my CD player or my disc or my cassette tape and just rock out to Mariah Carey. My little brothers
Yes.
loved it.
Okay. Okay. So she's helping you dream.
Yes, she was helping me dream. I would say who else? Honestly, my parents were a
Mm-hmm.
big part of that as well. We actually traveled quite a bit when we were growing up. I was on different dance teams, and we were actually really involved in different like type missionary type work. We traveled all over the country and
Mm-hmm.
performing and speaking, and seeing
Was your
how
dad a
well
pastor, mom a speaker? Like, what's
Um, they were somewhat like facilitators, like they would help lead different traveling groups and different
okay?
mission type groups.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we like even from when I was like little, like a baby, like I went over to like the Philippines and into China and Hong
Yeah.
Kong and all these different places. Um, and so really having not only that sense of adventure, but seeing how well my parents loved and led
Mm,
was like that was really really impactful for me. And and we just grew up doing it. We grew up, like I said, traveling all around the
yeah.
country and just up on stages and singing and speaking and performing. And um it was definitely, it was Christian based, and so it
Mm-hmm.
was, whatever your beliefs are, that's not necessarily what this is about, but seeing them love and lead well,
Mm-hmm.
and really being the hands and feet of Jesus was really
Yeah.
impactful for me.
Well, it's amazing because, and you're growing up, you're experiencing this, you're being taken on these adventures, whether you even remember them or not, or you just look back at pictures. You're like, hey, that's me as a baby in the Philippines. Like, but there's this instilled, almost an atmosphere, it sounds like, created around your family that we are here to impact others. Like we are here to
Yeah,
make an impact, to be that ripple that or the rock that starts the ripple.
yeah,
um Ooh, that's good. I should write that down.
you should make that a meme.
Be the rock that starts the ripple. That sometimes that gold just shows up, right? um
Uh,
so and then you're going through high school, and as you said earlier, you're trying to figure out, okay, but where do I belong? Does this body
yeah,
even belong? How do I fit in this, and make my place? So yeah, how does that show up, and you then lead into, I'm going to play sports. I'm going to get into this. I'm going to lean into the athleticism of this, and see where
yeah.
that takes me.
So, I mean, a big part of it was, I mean, because we were missionaries, we didn't have a ton of money. And a lot of it was if I was going to go to college, then I'm probably going to get on an athletic and or academic scholarship.
Mm,
And I mean, our family was always active. Both my parents actually played volleyball in college and had coached volleyball. And so we always had some type of sporting equipment around the house. We had volleyballs, and
yeah,
my
right.
brother played baseball. And so um, athletic activities were always a big part of our life as well. And I played basketball and tried softball and all this different stuff. And just so happened that I really, really enjoyed and was good at volleyball. And it was easy to be able to say, hey, dad, like, let's, come spike the ball at me and I can dig it, or let's pass back and forth, because they, both my mom and dad loved it as well. Um, and so it just kind of became the thing. I think part of it too, my parents kept my brothers and I busy on purpose with sports to keep us out of trouble.
Yeah, heard that before.
Uh-huh.
Faced that a lot as a youth pastor. Actually, a lot of the families that I was with, they're like, yeah, look, this just puts my kid in, he's playing hockey every Friday night instead of, yeah, yeah.
Yep. And
Okay.
that's great. That's great. And so like dove into sports because I loved it. I thrived at it. I enjoyed the team aspect of it. Um, I think there was also an element of it where I was also at the same time getting a lot of external feedback, right? Coming from like this environment that you're saying, like with my family and like adventure and travel, and we're doing all this really great, impactful things. And then I get shift like into this other world where we're a little bit more planted
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm getting this different external feedback where I somewhat felt like almost wrong for the way that I was made. I was
Mm-hmm.
smart and was in National Honor Society and like all these different advanced classes, but I was the blonde girl. And so I was then the butt of the blonde jokes. Or, like I mentioned, I was, like kind of like I like to have a ribbon in my hair when I played volleyball, and some of the girls made fun of me. And I was like, well, I
Right.
like to be girly, like, so I was kind of too girly for the sporty girls. Um, and I was kind of in the popular crowd, but I also had like multiple friend circles just because I was in newspaper, I was in the, whatever decorating club, I was in the pep club, I was,
Yeah.
like in the National Honor Society. So I had multiple circles of friends. And so I was almost like then too like sporty or too smart for the pretty girls. So I just felt like there were places where I didn't belong and
Yeah.
somewhat like wrong for the way that I was made. I was like, I was too much over here, but not enough over there. And really went through this space of, okay, like, well, maybe if I just pretend to act like that girl because it looks like people like her,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe they'll accept me. Or, oh, well, maybe if I just dress like that girl,
Yeah.
then I'll belong over here.
What's jumping out for me even right now as you say this, Charity, is somebody could hear this and be like, oh, woe is you. You were too pretty, you were too sporty. Okay, like cry me a river. And I think that that's I mean, that shouldn't be how we just receive something, is to then go into that and lean into that, because I think what's truly coming out in this is it's the universal story, the shared story in this, no matter where you find yourself, is this point that you just said of like, it felt like that I wasn't made right, that it was wrong the way that I was made, that
Yeah.
something in this deep held belief or fear around I don't belong here.
Yep.
That's the piece that we're really narrowing in on, and your journey to get there, because your journey to get there. But there's this sense of, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? Where's my place in this world? And so as you lean into that then, and really that's your story up to this point, how does that carry through, into university and beyond, to where you find yourself kind of growing into the life that you're leading now? And I mean, getting into this piece that we have touched on a few times of this, dark night.
Yeah. So I would say that was kind of a repeating theme
Mm-hmm.
for me of like, gosh, it feels like I don't belong. It feels like there's something wrong with the way that I was made. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting, like this external feedback that just says like, like I'm not enough or I'm too much or whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
picked up like people pleasing tendencies and perfectionism and like all this achiever type striving. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and really not necessarily knowing who I was. And I remember I was probably a couple years before graduating college. I almost went through this like not a midlife crisis, but I kind of an identity crisis of I like to call it like the Pretty Woman moment, where if you've seen that movie, she's like, I don't even know what kind of eggs I like.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I want everyone to like stop telling me who I should be or what I should do, or like quit shoulding all over me.
Yeah.
I'm going to quit shoulding all over myself, and I'm going to figure out what freaking eggs I like. Like I'm going to figure out like
And
what
what eggs do you
like
like?
what I loved eggs Benedict.
There we go. All right. You and my wife can go out for breakfast.
Yes. And so I really went on kind of this self discovery journey of like, who am I? Like, what are the things I like? What are the hobbies that I like without anyone else telling me? Like, does this spark joy? Does this bring me joy? Does this light me up? Do I have
Yeah.
fun doing this? Am I good at this? Like, what are my strengths? Right. I did all the personality tests, like, what color am I? What? Like, all of that stuff, and started to really reframe and reprogram a lot of the negative limiting beliefs and the false stories of who I should be, who I shouldn't be, how I should show up in the world. I started
Mm,
to really change the stories that I was telling myself internally, and that shifted so much. And so that was a big part of kind of this longer spiritual journey that I went on, where even in my book I kind of talk about like these repeating patterns that show up in our life, that those can kind of be like what you were just saying, Alex, of the, oh, like woe is you, the,
yeah.
oh, like these like little things, um quote unquote, right, like to our logical brain don't
Yeah.
necessarily seem like that big of a deal. But what's really interesting is that in our subconscious, it actually dictates the majority of our thoughts, beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
our actions, like our habits. And 80% of our subconscious is programmed in us by the time we're 7. And what we tend to do is actually repeat the stories that
Yeah.
we hear from 0 to 7 for the rest of our lives. And so even those little instances where when I was 5 years old and I went to a new school and asked the little girls on the playground if I could go play with them, and they said no, my 5-year-old little heart attached a limiting belief that said I don't belong, that I'm not enough,
Mm-hmm.
that that girls don't like me. And that was a repeating pattern that I then, my brain, and what's called confirmation bias, it's kind of like if you go shopping for a car and then all of a sudden you like see that car everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Your
Yeah.
brain is going to confirm that story. And so for me, it was confirming these different stories over and over and over, where I didn't belong, where I wasn't enough, where I was too much, where I didn't fit in. And so I had to go back and change and shift those stories. So that was like a big piece of now this spiritual growth journey that I went on
Yeah.
before
Where
the
are
dark
you in your
night of the
story at this
soul.
point? Like age wise kind of stage? What's the
This was like through my 20s. Like
okay. So you go, did you go to college
I did, yeah. Went to
on the, on
college,
the, on
graduated
this?
with honors,
Yeah.
a couple
Okay.
degrees, like kept that achiever thing going.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you're doing this, then you're trying to get to this point or trying to figure out, yeah, what are all the, why are these stories still running through my head when I'm achieving everything that I ever wanted? Why am I still feeling this way? I think those are the questions that we start to, when you find yourself alone and you're starting to get frustrated with like, yeah, but why is this still the freaking thing then?
Mhm.
That's what you're drawing us to is actually because that's been programmed in your brain from way before you can
Yeah.
remember.
Oh, this person is
Yeah.
this, right? Same type of relationship or person or friendship. Like it's a different person, but it's the same
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. So you're experiencing this and you're willingly going into this journey to go back and rewrite old stories
Yep.
in your life. And where does that take you?
Well, I think a lot of it then started to show up in, right, it started to show up then as different, right, different people started to show up in my life. I started to show up differently, like more authentically as myself. I'd like the
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing started to go away. I stopped worrying so much about what other people said. I stopped really worrying about judgment. I stopped, like even like different circles of friends where it was like gossip and negativity. Like a lot of, like I started noticing, I'm like, oh, like that's not the people that I want to be around. So I started shifting circles of where I was at.
Yeah.
And then that was a lot of where then the whole pageant thing came in. In the pageant world here, it was funny because they're like, you just like came out of the woodworks and you just like took over the place. And I'm like, well, but actually, it was because of the 10 years prior of the spiritual journey that I had been on, where it didn't bother me to like literally jump into the fire of being judged and being in a competition with
Wow.
a lot of other amazing women, right? And be fine
Yeah.
with the outcome regardless, and be so solid in who I am and in the story that I have and the mission that I'm on, that that was what.
It's so interesting. Like that, I just thought of my journey with acting was very similar, where I always knew I wanted to be an actor and everything. But then I had a lot of work to do around, why am I showing up on stage? Why am I getting it? What do I really want here? And then it was, what, 4 years ago, I guess, I actually got an agent finally through a friend of a friend, and then got my first audition and show up in that space. And it's cold. I mean, it's judgment. Like, that's it. You simply
Yeah.
show up, and you're not going to be coddled by these casting directors or any. It's really an experience in judgment and failure. And
Yeah.
what that put me through allows me to show up now more confidently than ever,
Yeah.
facing the fear and showing up anyways,
Yeah.
instead of thinking that there is no fear, which is a crock of crap, or I can't show up until the fear is eliminated, which also is a lie. It's really this effort of, I know the fear is there. Of course, I'm afraid of being judged, or I'm afraid of having tomatoes thrown at me, whatever. But I'm going to show up anyways,
Mm-hmm.
because um because why? I guess, what is the pageant thing? Like, what is that? What is the goal? Like, is it the spirit of competition? Is it um about sharing a message? What was
It
that? What
was
was leading you towards that?
it was multiple things. Like I said, I was intentionally seeking different circles of friends and different circles of women, and these, like, seeing what these women were doing and how involved they were in the community. And like, so many of them are, directors of nonprofits, and they're
Mm-hmm.
speaker, like, they're really high level women
So much more than just
in
the fancy
communities.
dress on a stage, right? Like,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes. And that's what I was finding was, right, it's beyond this, like, stereotype of, oh, like, just pretty girls in pretty dresses. It was like, actually, these women are, like, kicking butt and taking names, and they are
Mm.
awesome, and I wanted to be around them. So that was a big part of it. And then it was almost like this trial by fire, like, on purpose, right? Like, is my worth, like, going to be found in, like, is my identity going to be found in me either winning the crown or not? But it was also, it's almost like this way to amplify, like, whatever it is that you like, whatever message that you have, or whatever message that I was sharing. It was a way that amplified it. All of a sudden I could call any school that I wanted and say, "Hi, I'm Mrs. Idaho. I would love to come share with your kids about
Mm.
yada, yada, yada." And they're like, "Yeah." Like, it was just like this thing that blasted wide open doors that maybe I had to, like, knock on doors a lot more before.
Wow.
I was able to really get connected, like, with huge community leaders. And yeah, it was just this, like, thing that opened up doors for me that hadn't necessarily been opened before.
What do you
But
think?
here's
How can someone do that? That's such an interesting way to do this, because I'm already hearing in your story, like, it's going from this, like, achieving, I'm going to make it happen, I'm going to go and open these, I'm going to knock on these doors, or I'm going to force them open myself, to then you put yourself in a position where all of a sudden now your reputation precedes you, the name, the title, whatever it is, the doors are already open by the time you get there.
yeah,
It's an amplifying, from achieving to amplifying. And so if somebody's like, yes, holy crap, I want that, that, I imagine it's not an immediate change that's going to happen, but what steps can they start to put in if they're like, yeah, okay, wow, that's something that it's really touching me right now. I'm hearing this story and feeling like that's the path for me to amplify my message. Where do they kind of begin to make that happen?
oh, I love this, because this is also a big part of my journey of
Mm-hmm.
knowing, and I'm sure it is with you as well. Like, with your podcast, it was like me knowing that I wanted to have amazing conversations and connections with other communicators and, leaders and influencers that are doing really great things around the world. I'm going to build the platform to be able to have them to share their story, right? Like,
Yeah.
I stopped waiting for other people to invite me onto their platforms, onto their stages, and I started to create my own.
Yep.
It
Build
was
your own
messy.
stage.
Yes,
Yep.
like, write the freaking book,
Mm-hmm.
Do the freaking podcast, like do the event, have people at your home, whatever it might be. Start small and don't despise the day of small beginnings, because I had to start with one episode and it was messy. And like, if you listen to my podcast, like I'm actually even going through, like I'm changing like the music again and like changing
Mm-hmm.
the image again. And it's because like I am growing and evolving, and that's okay. And so if you listen to like some of the beginning episodes, like it's bad music and it's fine. And I've changed it and it's good now.
Uh-huh. But
Like
it's,
my,
and it's not about being embarrassed or trying to hide that old version of yourself. It's saying that's who I
no.
was and look how I've grown. That's the story. That's the evolution. That's the shift. That's what's actually beautiful about this and relatable to the whole person that you are and message that you have.
Yeah, like you eventually have to get to a point like that you stop waiting for other people to pick you and you just pick yourself.
Oh, gotta say that again. You stop waiting for people to pick you and you pick yourself. Hmm. So you're in the pageant world and you're not there anymore. What happened in between to get you to the place where you are now, where you're like, I'm just going to write the book. I'm just going to do the thing. I'm getting my message out there. I'm getting into doors. I'm starting conversations wherever I want to start conversations. And yet, what showed up?
Well, it was actually part of what then got me on the stage, like the international stage, and making top six. Not only was the launch of the book, but the story that went inside that completed the book. And that was The Dark Night of the Soul. So if you're ready to go there, we can.
Oh, yeah, we are ready.
All right.
Where are we? How long ago was this now?
I don't know.
No, I mean, like, how long ago, like, the point that you just got to in the
Oh,
story
yeah. So this
in
was
your life?
four years ago.
Okay. All right.
And it's something that I would never wish upon anyone. And at the same time, I am so, so grateful for the lessons that I learned from it. And so 4 years ago, my husband and I, we journeyed through losing a child.
Mm.
And it was this space where, even though I had done all of this personal growth and really shifted a lot of the stories that were, that I had told myself in my life, and like had worked on like the shame and the self-worth and who I was and all of this stuff, it rocked me at the deepest levels of who I was, of really feeling broken that I couldn't keep our baby safe. And it's not only the loss of a baby, but it's the loss of hopes and dreams, and who am I? And it was this season of really questioning, like, why God, why this, why us, why am I even here? And it peeled back every single layer of the deepest questions of who we are, and what I was, like what I was even doing here on the planet, and why I was even alive. And in the ugly cry moment, laying on the bathroom floor in a puddle of tears, in all of the brokenness that I felt, God came and met me, and he didn't need to fix me. As broken as I felt, he didn't fix me. In me questioning why I was, he didn't give me, like, in all the shame that I felt, he didn't give me the 7 steps to get out of your whatever.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. What
know,
does that look like? The moment, like when you say on the bathroom floor in a puddle of tears, is there like, are you like in your mind, you're like, yeah, I'm going back. I can almost feel I can feel the cold tile on my face right now. Like, is it that visceral
oh, for
of an
sure,
image of a moment to you? Yeah. We
for
all,
sure.
I can imagine that. I know exactly in my dark night, I can, tap back. You go right back to that feeling. It's a flashbulb moment in your brain. And so you say, God met you and didn't want to fix you? Like, what does that look like? Was it sayings? Was it words that came to mind? Was it images that came to mind? Was it an actual kind of sense of being held? What what is that like? What was that like for you to feel this um, healing in that moment, or this sense of comfort, or this sense of, I don't know, love?
Yeah. So I think a big part of it was, right, in all of the brokenness that I felt, right? Like I couldn't keep my baby safe. Like our dreams are broken, our family is broken, and my hopes are like, right, like there's something wrong with me. Again, here's
Mm-hmm.
this lesson, there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was nothing that God needed to fix about me.
Yeah.
And when like the creator of the universe, right, when there is nothing that he needs to fix,
Yeah.
right, that's like, that was a big thing for me. And as I sat and asked the questions of like why am I here, like I even went through having thoughts of, honestly, like not even like questioning why I was even alive. And in those moments, God began to impart, right? Because I think we can teach what we know, but we can impart what we experience. And God began
Mm.
to impart in me the deep belief in the very core of who I am, that
Yeah.
there are millions of pieces and parts that have to come together for life to be sustained. And so it's not a mistake that you are here, Alex, at this time
Yeah.
out of all of history. It's not a mistake that I am here. It's not a mistake that you, the listener, the person that is listening, it's not a mistake that you are here. You are here on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, you are a God dream wrapped in human skin. And from that experience, I was then given these lenses, this perspective that I can literally see the God dream inside of every single person and see the miracle that they are. And having that type of a lens and being able to impart that type of a belief, like what I
Mhm.
do when I work with someone or speak with someone, it's not just this thing that I'm teaching.
Yeah.
It is an
Yeah.
actual impartation and an igniting of someone's purpose inside of them and the permission that they need to fully walk out in the big, huge, audacious God dreams that are on their heart.
It's incredible to think of this. You're like, the story is, you go through and you do the work, and oh wow, I did the work in my 20s, and I went down and I recognized what wasn't there, or these old stories that I was telling myself, and I went back to heal those. And then out of that, I got into this whole new field of pageantry and showing up and really stepping into this world and making the impact. Your story could have ended there, and you're like, I'm finally making the impact that I knew I was supposed to make since I was a little girl, and we toured the world and got on stage and performed for people. That's exactly what I'm doing, and all the doors are being opened for me, and it's this amazing thing. And you're like, wow, there's the climb, there's like, that's wrapping up the story. And then you're like, no, 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 actually, that's still the before.
Yeah.
Because then we had this experience, this depth, this trauma, this loss that brought grief into my life in a way that I've never touched before, that I've never
Yeah.
experienced. And that grief actually brought shadows to all the colors. It elevated everything else in my life, because now I have experienced this thing that truly showed me the depth of all of creation, and the depth of wonder, and what inspiration and ignition and dreaming really looks like when you faced the darkness. Now you know what light is, and it's like, now you know how to show up and help people see that it's not just about that pageant stage. Like, you think you're reaching for a stage to stand up there and get a sash. No, 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 no. It's when you've gone through the thing. It's when you've gone into the depths, when you've sat in that hole and had to be pulled out. That's when you can step forward into life and really show up with your true mission and who you are. And I just feel like that's exactly the story that you just wrapped up for us. Am I right? I mean, I just took some liberties with that, but how does that feel to hear that back?
Yeah, for sure. And that's where the whole meant for more thing, that
Mm-hmm.
was the launching pad of that, and the healing that came from that, and the message that came from that. That's exactly, that was my meant for more moment. And that's where all of it came from.
Do you feel like, just as you say, meant for more moment as we wrap up here, do you feel like, everybody listening to this, everybody that you interact with, do we all have a meant for more moment? Is that what we're looking for? Is that what we need to kind of tap into to see what the path is going forward?
I think that we have multiple meant for more moments, right?
Yeah,
It's that
hallelujah.
moment where it's like, oh, like what I'm doing, like there's got to be more than this, right? And we like take the messy, imperfect action to shift and to change things and to go for the more of what is on our heart.
Mm,
And so I absolutely believe that we all have a meant for more moment that could be, right? Like even I have a little 5-year old, right? So even him, when he was learning, right, going from crawling to walking,
yeah,
right, like he knows that he is, right, meant for more. Like it's ingrained in us as who we are as human beings, that we
yeah.
are meant for more. And I think that there's so much power when we share those meant for more moments, and we share those pieces and parts of our story. Just like what you, right, like no boring stories, like there,
Yeah.
no one has a boring story, but it's up to us to be able to capture the magic and the lessons that
Hmm.
come from our story, and to be able to share it in a way that really makes an impact on other people.
Oh, you are so well spoken. It's amazing. You've been, it's been such a good conversation. I love hearing you walk through your story. I just find myself getting captivated in it here and then realizing, oh yeah, holy crap, I'm supposed to interview. As we got through this here, I mean, even to hear your story, there's this element of this discovery and understanding of the more that you're meant for. And for you, what I heard here was this awareness that that's what was for you, um, uh, from the beginning. And you leaned into that in this effort of achieving, your own path there, achieving your own mission, as it were, and kind of making that happen and trying to form that and force that to happen. And then through many different moments, but let's say, this moment 4 years ago, you're faced with this moment where you realize that you're completely not in control. You cannot achieve this. This is about amplifying something that's deep within you, amplifying something that actually was put there by by God, by the creator, by this external. And it's about you amplifying that and showing up in the world now. And I don't know what you go for, but I would say what I heard in this is yours is a story from achieving to amplifying. And if somebody finds themselves in this place of like, I know I'm meant for more, but it's just not happening, um and they are ready to just let that true voice be amplified from within them, how are they going to find you and start this conversation? Because you are absolutely the right person to talk to get that going. So what are some great ways for them to find you? And well, let's start there and then we'll see what else you've got.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is just come hang out with me on Instagram. That's mostly where I hang out. I'm on all the other platforms, but just come hang out with me on Instagram. I mean, I post a lot on there, so if you want your
Yeah,
Instagram feed to be filled, it's great.
I love it.
But yeah, I'm there to, I'm just following the call as a communicator to really speak hope and truth and life, um, into the hearts of those that are ready and willing to listen. And so come hang out with me on Instagram. If you want to grab a copy of my book, awesome. It's on Amazon.
Incredible. Absolutely. Go get the book, dive more into the story, read all her words, and you've got a gift for us.
I do. So
Tell
if
me
you
about that.
guys feel like you are meant for more, and as I was sharing that meant for more moment, I'm actually starting off a new series with my podcast. Again, the podcast is called Meant for More. And it literally, like, this whole series is called My Meant for More moment.
Mm,
And if you have hung out with me at all, you know that I'm obsessed with creating platforms that also, like similar to Alex, that give people the space and the permission to share their story. And so if you have a Meant for More moment, I would actually love to invite you to have your story be shared on the podcast. So if you text the word moment to 833 231 8098, or you can go to wearemeantformore.com/moment. I will shoot you over the link where you can submit your story, and then I will actually read your story on the podcast and give you a shout out, because again, your Meant for More moment is meant to make an impact on those that hear it. So that's what this is all about.
brilliant. I love it. And if you're listening to this, then you've listened to any more of these podcasts, then you know how to wrap your story up in a nice little package. Who were you? Then what happened to make you who you are? Send that along to Charity and you'll get on the show for sure. There we go. I appreciate that. That is super cool opportunity. And if you missed the phone number, then just hit the back 30 seconds thing and you can grab that again to text that word moment to Charity, get on that list and get this opportunity. Charity, I am so, so grateful for you showing up here and sharing your story and opening us up to, the truth once again, that there are no boring stories, and for inviting us to share our story wherever we are in it and know that there is still more to come. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I'm excited for where you're going from here and the impact you're going to continue to make.
Oh, thanks so much, Alex. It's always so great talking with you. And I just kind of see like you holding like this ladder like in your hand, and you're just like allowing people to just rise. You are a piece of the tide that rises all ships. So thank you for amplifying other people's voices and their stories as well.
Whew, take that. Receive that. Thank you.